Hello, hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And, it's that time of the season. It's a little late, but it's time for Temple's Treasures. Bum bum bum. For those who don't know, because we are on our 12th season after all. Might have missed one or two. Temple's Treasures, we like to look at some unique cards from Magic's history. Basically, we got a few rules. We choose a type, a card type, and we choose a color. We each bring a couple cards to the table. We talk about them, so that you know some secret tech that you'll play, and somebody might go, "Oh, what's that?"
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, got a few rules. It's got to be under 2,000 decks on EDHRec, and it's got to be first printed before 8th edition.
Yes.
They can have reprints after that, but if they do, that makes it, honestly, a little bit more special, because it means they're really not being played if they're still under 2,000 decks, and they've been reprinted.
Yeah, I mean, we picked 2,000 because we figured anything over 2,000 was something a lot of you have probably already heard of. And the whole point of this is to tell you about cards you haven't heard of. Cards where you're looking at it, where you look at it and go, what does that do? Because that's exactly what I want your opponents to say when you play the card. Now, a couple things to consider. Because of that 2,000 cap, there's a lot of cards from that era that we're not going to discuss. So,
for sure.
A card like Desertion or Spelljack are both in over 2,000 decks. They're both great cards. We're not saying, because we're not discussing it, we're not saying you shouldn't play it, or we're not saying that it's lousy. We're just saying, you've probably already heard of it. That's all.
We like these chaff type cards. These niche. There are going to be a lot of niche cases here.
Yeah,
and we recognize that these cards are not for every deck, and that's fine. If you are interested in this, if you like this episode, feel free to go back and watch the past ones. I have a whole playlist on our YouTube channel, so go check that out. First, we did enchantments of every color, and then we did sorceries of every color. Last season, we did white instance, which we have a video of, not just audio. And now we're talking blue instance. Yeah. So I figure we'll just jump right into it. I think
sounds good.
We've given enough primer here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sip on my sparkling water. My first card is Telekinesis. It's an instant for blue, and it says tap target creature. I'm gonna read the Oracle text because on a lot of these cards, the written text does not make any sense. So it says tap target creature. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by that creature this turn. It does not untap during its controller's next 2 untap steps. So for those newer players, it's like frost counters, but or whatever they're called. Are they called frost counters? Anyway, something like that. It's also like a targeted fog. It's real interesting.
Yeah, it's like, don't get fooled into thinking that, oh, look, blue fog. This is not here for blue fog. That's nice. It's cute.
This is here to tap down and negate their what's the Blightsteel Colossus?
Right.
Like to deal with serious single card threats.
Yeah, because you want to keep those things tapped down and out of the way, and for their next two untap steps, that's a long time. I don't know that people really understand how long that is, because you swing in, it's tapped. It's now doing no combat damage, but it's already tapped. So for that entire turn, it was going to be tapped anyway. But then the next 2 untaps, it stays tapped. That is a long time, especially if you were thinking that you were going to be able to swing once, or if you were thinking that this was a card you're going to swing with turn after turn. Well, you're going to need an alternative. If this was a card you were hoping was going to be available for defense, it's not. By the way, this also works on vigilance creatures.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Oh yeah, this is a great card.
This is great for vigilance creatures. This is great for creatures that have tap abilities, where you force them to use it the first time, and then they get it's like what's the Amonkhet exhaust? Is that what it's called? Where you like tap, like you
exert.
Exert. Thank you. But like it's even better. It just like for 2 blue mana. It does quite a thing, and it's a card that you're going to have in hand for a while until you find the right target.
Right.
But I mean, it doesn't make it It doesn't make it useless. I almost didn't include this card because of 2 reasons. 1, it's on the reserve list, and 2, that kind of makes it expensive. It's $65 right now. I mean, the proxy debate, but it's in 82 decks right now.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because of the reserve list. But
for sure.
One more thing, because I got to throw this in. It costs 2 blue. You're keeping up 2 blue. Everybody's expecting the counterspell. You go to combat, nobody's thinking about that. All they're thinking is, oh, I better not play that combat trick because maybe Andy's got the counterspell. No, Andy doesn't have a counterspell. He's just going to tap down your dude for the next 2 turns.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're not going to deal combat damage. So
I like the Oracle text first line of tap target creature. So like you can use it whenever. Obviously, you said vigilance makes it work, and then the next line following it up with prevent all combat damage. So like you can wait. So if say somebody attacks your opponent with their Blightsteel Colossus, you don't have to use it then. Like, just wait until it comes for you or somebody you need help from.
Or for what are they called? For the Eldrazi with Annihilator.
Oh yeah.
The Annihilator trigger is going to go off, but if it's swinging at an opponent, well, the Annihilator trigger goes off. You can prevent the combat damage if you want, or you can wait until after the combat damage. But this is 2 more turns. So even if you don't use it as a fog, it's stopping the Annihilator trigger from going off because you're not letting it untap at all. So, great card.
I mean, honestly, I think that this is that specific scenario is just another thing that we always talk about where you need to kind of use the table politics. Just start talking. Our play group doesn't enough do the politics talk of like, hey, let's make a deal here. Yeah, I won't, and like you don't have to reveal that you have telekinesis, but you can reveal that you have something,
right,
to deal with the thing.
Oh yeah.
So, what's your first card, Bruce?
My first card is Shoving Match. Shoving Match. It's 2 and a blue, and it says until end of turn, all creatures gain tap target creature.
I love this.
Yeah. Now this is a blue card. Generally speaking, part of the reason why it's not in a lot of decks, it's only in 109. Blue doesn't tend to have a lot of creatures. So the handful of creatures that you have, this is all creatures, not just yours. So your opponents, that guy with all the token creatures suddenly taps 5 of them and taps out all of your creatures, and you are left completely vulnerable. So that's part of the issue. But I mean, we're not all playing monocolor, right? Blue with whatever, a blue-green deck running a ton of token creatures. Blue-white, again, you have a bunch of token flying creature, a bunch of small flying creatures. If you're in a deck where you can significantly outnumber your opponents with creatures, you can open up the gates, especially on one opponent. Because if I wait until the end of my opponent's the last opponent before me to cast this, all creatures gain tap target creature. Okay, great. So all of my creatures then become untapped. So they're available. I can tap any one of them to tap somebody else's. But then it goes all the way around, right? So as people untap, suddenly they've got more fodder to use to swing. So you really have to be careful with how you're going to use this. But I think in the right deck, this is just a bizarre. I think this is a lot of fun.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And keep in mind too, this is the creatures that are on board when this spell resolves. Like,
yes.
Like, I'm sure that there's some sort of combo you can do with this and what is it, Intruder Alarm, where like when a creature comes into play, you'd untap everything. Yeah. But like, what I love about this card is just like the flavor of it. Like, Shoving Match is such like a good name for this, because like it really is like you tap a thing to tap a target to tap an opponent's creature, and then in response they tap it to tap one of your things, and it's just like a back and forth type thing.
Yes.
And it's just that like chain of like, well, in response I'll tap it, thank you very much. And it's just I love the like goofiness that can come from this, because it just like there are certain moments that are going to be game changing, and I would love to see the weird interactions that come from this. Like, for instance, like the first thing I thought of was having this in like a blue-red like inspired deck, that mechanic from Theros.
Okay.
It's like when it becomes untapped, do a thing, like Fellhide Spiritbinder, I think it was.
Right.
Where it's like when it becomes untapped, you can pay red and a 1 to, and so like you can kind of get it like a turn earlier, because you're tapping something else to tap it, even though it's got summoning sickness type of thing. It's just
right.
There are these niche cases where it will just pop off.
Right, and I think that for the most part, I mean, if you're casting it, on your opponent's end step, or no, just before their end step, because it's until end of turn, then yes, all of your stuff could end up getting tapped down. Probably will, because you're going to want to use all of your creatures to tap opponent's creatures. But if you target the player who just had his turn, it's likely that they've already tapped a few creatures. You may very well be able to force them to tap out and leave them wide open for your turn, the next turn, until they finally get to their untap step. This comes out of nowhere. Nobody's expecting this.
No, and I think this plays better in like a 60 card deck where like you can have multiple copies. I think in Commander it still can do great things, especially our favorite little keyword Vigilance. You can cast this before blocks are declared and tap their blockers down. If you've got Vigilance creatures, it's great.
Right. That's a great idea. But yeah, that Shoving Match, like I said, it's in 109 decks on EDHRec. And this one's a cheap one. It's only 15 cents.
My next one is maybe kind of lightly stacks. It's 1 and a blue. It's called Pale Moon. Until end of turn, if any player, taps a non-basic land for mana, it produces colorless mana instead of any other type. This will turn off 5-color decks pretty well, or any deck really that's over 3. But it's only for a turn, so that's nice. It's crucial in those key moments where your opponent is trying to win the game. And I guess, the thing with this deck is then they'll just tap all their mana in response, or tap all their lands that they want the colored mana from. So maybe, that's the biggest hole here. Well, but you can do it during their upkeep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's definitely when you're doing it. You have to do it during their upkeep, because then you shut them right down. No, Pale Moon is yet another reminder. When you're picking your land for your deck, non-basics should not take up more than I'm not sure how much but let's say 40% of your land, no more than 40% should be non-basic.
Yeah.
You want to have a lot of basics. There are so many different cards that force you to search for a basic, and Pale Moon takes that player, like you said, the 5-color guy who is loaded up with duels and every other card, and just crushes them.
Yeah.
Admittedly, for one turn, but for one turn you get nothing. That's harsh.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. You're generally only playing this on other people's turns. You can use this at the beginning of your turn, or like during your turn, if you want to ensure that people, like, if you want to like eke out that counter spell. So either this can be the counter target, or if one of your opponents has blue up, they're gonna have to float it now in response. So like it does do that double duty, where if it's your turn and you want to use this, it's great for protection, but generally you're going to play it on somebody's upkeep, which maybe just turns it into them going, all right, pass.
I'm a big fan of cards that punish folks for playing too much non-basic, and this comes from a guy who regularly plays too much non-basic.
Yeah, I love my basic lands. There were a few blue instances that cared about people playing non-basics or wanted people to play more basics, but this is the one that I chose. It is currently in 118 decks, which is 0% of the 1,426,165 decks it could be in. Great time. I kind of want to start running this card. I mean, I want to run all these cards, but what's your next one, bud?
Siren's Call.
Never heard of it.
Siren's Call is 1 blue mana, and it is a wall of text on an old card. So I'm definitely going to read the Oracle. Hang in there, folks. I will get to the end.
Some disturbing Anson Maddox art right there, too.
Yes, definitely. Cast this spell only during an opponent's turn before attackers are declared.
Okay.
Creatures the active player controls attack this turn if able.
Okay.
At the beginning of the next end step, destroy all non-wall creatures that player controls that didn't attack this turn. Ignore this effect for each creature the player didn't control continuously since the beginning of the turn. In other words, if your creatures are summoning sick and somebody plays this on you, they don't die. You get to keep them. If for any reason they aren't able, meaning you have tapped them to do something or tapped them to equip or did whatever to try and avoid having them swing, well, they're getting destroyed.
I like it.
I got such a kick out of this card, and I own this card. I rarely ever use it in decks just because this is not goad. They can swing at you. That's the downside, and it's a pretty big downside. When you tell somebody they have to swing, you better have a wall of creatures up to really punish them for swinging with everything, because they're probably going to swing it all at you because, well, you're the one who's doing this to them. But Siren's Call, I like the card a lot.
It's wild.
Yeah, and it has had several reprints. It's as cheap as 16 cents. So, again, not an expensive card.
There's so much going on with this card that, like, it's fairly straightforward if you get through all of the reading. It has an answer for every case that your opponents generally will have, such as like tapping things for mana or tapping to crew, like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, we all have ways to dodge being forced to attack. You know, when your creature is goaded, if you can find a way to tap your creature so it doesn't have to swing, a lot of times you'll do that. This doesn't allow that.
This with what was the one we were just talking about? Shoving Match.
Yeah,
is like a great little quote unquote combo. where like you can, like if you have enough creatures, you can just, it turns into a one-sided board wipe for them. It's interesting. I love this card. This is, I honestly am, this is like the first one that I'm surprised doesn't see more play. Like the other ones kind of make sense.
Now, Siren's Call definitely sees more play than the other ones. Siren's Call is in 552 decks.
Okay.
So this isn't, it isn't as though this is never shows up, but
yeah,
well under 2,000.
It's fairly niche for sure.
Yeah.
I like it.
So.
If I played blue, I'd play it. Where are we at with time? I think we got a few minutes left. We each got one card left.
About 25. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. We'll race through the last couple here.
All right. My last one is Plagiarize. For 3 and a blue, instant until end of turn. If target player would draw a card, instead that player skips that draw and you draw a card. I like that this is an instant. I like that this isn't a creature. Like, what is it? Notion Thief? Completely busted because it's on a stick. This is a one-time, generally speaking. You can get it back out of the graveyard, yada yada. Like, yes, okay. There are ways to abuse this card. But somebody, pays, 6 or 7 mana to draw X cards. You play this, and then you get to draw them. And I think the big thing here is, like, this is also just another example of a card that I chose that you're going to hold on to for a long time. Or if it's nearing end game, you play this on their upkeep, and they don't even get to draw a single card.
Yeah,
that's kind of nuts, honestly. Like, to deny a player of their
right
step draw.
Yeah, I mean, you can lock them out. I look at Plagiarize, and I see it the same way you do. I'm waiting for the blue player to play any spell that lets them draw more than one card, or anybody who has, if you've got anything that says when this happens, draw a card. Okay, great. It's about to happen, I see. Okay, now I'm going to just draw every time you would draw instead. That's wonderful. Do keep in mind, it doesn't work if it says may.
Oh, yeah.
If that player may draw a card,
they can choose not to, yeah.
Yeah, they can just choose not to, and then you won't draw. But again, if you're just looking to stop them from drawing a pile of cards, I guess that's an option as well. You don't have to draw the cards, you're preventing them from drawing it. So.
Yeah. Against a Rishkar's expertise, perfect,
Definitely.
And, I mean, the way I look at this card is very similar to the way I look at Crafty Cutpurse, where as somebody who's been playing the game for 5 years, like, this is a card that I would hold in my hand for too long. Like, I think I would just, like, never find the right moment. Crafty Cutpurse, for those who don't know, says... it's a 2/2 human pirate with flash. When it enters the battlefield, each token that would be created under an opponent's control this turn is created under your control instead. So the idea here is, like, you either steal their, like, army of 1/1s, or more realistically, especially now, their pile of treasure.
Yes.
And with Plagiarize, I feel like I would be like, okay, they get to draw 2 cards this turn. It's not worth it. Oh, they're drawing 3? I don't know. You got to figure out your own threshold before you put it in your deck, where you're like, if I've held this in my hand for 3 turns and somebody's drawing 3 cards, I'm going to play it,
Well, yeah, and I would look at this. I mean, this card costs 4 mana. Would I pay 4 mana for a card that says, I draw 2 cards and you don't? It's a 4-card swing. So 4 mana doesn't sound too bad, even if it's only draw 2. Now, having said that, I would do the same thing you just said, Andy. I want the big cash in.
You want to really hose somebody.
I want to see somebody have
I want to piss somebody off.
That creates a situation where they're going to draw 8 cards, and I'll just play Plagiarize. It's like, okay, so I'm going to draw 8, or are you choosing not to draw any of these cards? It's also a great way to shut down people who start to form a loop.
Oh, for sure.
The loop is reliant on them drawing that card.
What? Are we bad people for wanting to ruin somebody's day with this card? Like that, it just seems so like excellent to get that much value out of it.
Well, you held plagiarized for that long.
That's true.
No complaints.
Love this card. Love the art.
Yeah, the art's pretty crazy. It's in 826 decks.
Is that true?
EDHRec.
Yeah.
At least that's what my last number said. So.
That's what I had too, yeah.
Perfect. My last card.
Uh-huh.
Also 4 mana. It's called, it's Deflection. Change the target of a target spell with a single target. Counterspell targets.
Ah. Can it target itself?
Every counterspell targets. Yeah, you can change the target to itself.
Okay.
You can, or change the counterspell target to Deflection.
Ah.
I'm not even sure if that works, but
I don't
you can definitely change it to itself. And obviously, this works for any red burn spell. I mean, that's kind of what that's where your mind immediately goes when you think about this. But any aura, you can redirect that onto one of your creatures if you prefer, or onto somebody else's creature if it's perhaps maybe something that's not as beneficial as you would want it to be. There are so many cards that target other cards, or so many spells that target other stuff. It happens over and over and over again. And having a card like Deflection, especially when your opponents have seen it before and they know it's floating around.
Yeah.
They might not know if it's in your hand, but
especially in blue. We have this we have this effect a lot in red, especially lately, as like post Magic 10. I looked at the rules. It can't make a spell target itself, but
okay.
you can have it target something that will resolve first. So like you can have that counter target the deflection. So I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not.
Yes, you can.
I think you need a target before it goes on the stack.
Well, it says here you can choose to make a spell on the stack target this spell.
Oh, okay. There you go.
If such a target choice would be legal and had the spell been cast while the spell was on the stack. The new target for the deflected spell is not chosen until this spell resolves.
Okay.
The spell is still in the stack when new targets are selected for the spell. So.
All right. There are a lot of notes and rules on this one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, this is a fun one, and yeah, I like it. I think it's something that can run in a lot of blue decks. Deflection is in 358 decks on EDHRec, so feel free to round that number up.
Wow, sped right through those, which is a good thing. Didn't dilly dally.
No,
but we got some real cool cards here. Kind of makes me want to play more blue. Don't tell Bruce. Man, after what was it? We did Muzio last week, and then we had these, or Muzio a couple weeks ago, and then these. Blues on the horizon, guys. Blues on the up and up. It's got a new sheen to it now that people are scared of white and green.
Right.
But hey, that's Temple's Treasures for you. You get some cool new niche cards for your decks. You get some cheap ones. You get some expensive ones. Do what you want. I don't care. What did you find to be the hardest problem here?
The hardest problem was so in the early days of Magic, almost all of the instants were either counter spells or bounce spells. So return it to your hand. There were some variants, return it to the top of your library or something along that line. And it's like those are all valid options. But I wanted to find something a little different. Everybody runs counter spells. Everyone runs a bounce spell or two. Just because these are older, or do something that's a little different. I wanted something more than that. So I found it was a little difficult coming up with a handful of cards that I thought were still pretty cool, but just did something a little different.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I had the same problem, and then I was like, is Bruce gonna choose this one? And generally I try not to think about that, but because I knew that the pool was so small, and that's not to say that the pool of blue cards printed before 8th edition under 2,000 decks was small, but the pool that wasn't counters or bounce spells was small.
Well, like we said at the start, I mentioned Spelljack and Desertion. Well, Arcane Denial is another card that fits into this set, but it's printed through it's in so many decks.
Because I just did a quick count, and there's 110 cards we could have chosen from. Right. Which is not a small amount. It's just it just happens like that. Yes. There were also a lot of cards that cared about specific colors, which I think is just more of a Magic, like an early Magic thing, rather than a specifically blue thing. Right. But we've always come across those throughout these 12 seasons anyway. So
yeah, there were a couple. It's interesting because you see some of them and then they work well together. Like you can change the text on one card from one land type to another land type. And then there's a card like Riptide, which is, I believe, tap all the islands in play. Right. But I'm playing blue. I'm not sure I want to be tapping all the islands, but if you change all of the islands into swamps and all the swamps into islands, then you're tapping all the swamps, and it's just I don't know. I looked at that and I thought, well, it's a little too cutesy. Especially for today's day and age. And it was also a lot of changing the colors of creatures to get around protection from. Right. And we see a little less protection from than we used to. So it's not as helpful, but if you find any of these cards helpful or exciting, let us know in the comments below, because we're on YouTube, or shoot us an email or tweet at us or blue sky at us. Is that the verb? We got all that information at the end of this, past the goodbyes. But I think that's going to do it for us today, because I am completely blued out. But we'll be back next week with a cool episode. Who's to say what it is? Who's to say how cool it will be? Because it will be cool. I know that for sure. Because we're Temple of the False Pod. We're at X and not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are cool. Fun. Sure as heck are fun. And cool. I'll go with it. Yeah. I'm Andy. I'm Bruce.
Have a great night. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. Play some Magic for me, and may your 5th land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait. Before you go, just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter at falsepodmtg. Bruce is at Manaburned, and I'm at Andy Weekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the Temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!